You want me to lend you in a secret? Alright, so, come here. A little bit closer. Okay. So, I'm going to be telling you what type of girls I'm into, alright? Do not tell this to no one. Okay, so, the type of girls that I'm into are... There we go. Sorry, boys, I had a bit of a technical issue real quick. I had to fix the microphone and as well as the audio because for some reason it was like bugged out and I sounded a bit glitchy, so here it is. Also, here, have a sip. Ah, even though I'm not like 50 years old, I do like drinking Monster Energy drink sometimes, but either way. Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the Dying Light 2 event that just happened. Or is happening at the moment, I should really be saying. Why am I using past tense, but oh well. Anyway, how is the Dying Light 2 event actually overall in general? It is both good, but also slightly disappointing at the same time, and not for a reason you might think. The event itself is not really particularly bad, but it's sort of what is restricted to, which I will get into in a little bit. So, the way you are able to participate in this event, actually there is no like community event, it's just like personal missions that you do mostly, and that's pretty much it. There is no like a community call that everyone has to do or can do and whatnot. It's not really like that, it's more or less just for the sake of your self-pleasurement. Wow, that sounds wrong, but either way. So the way this essentially works is it's only tied to Tower Raid. And Tower Raid is good, but it has a couple of problems, but I will talk about that later. But firstly, let's talk about how you're actually able to gain access to it. Now, for some of you might think, well, if the Halloween event is restricted to only Tower Raids, then that means new players have to play the game until they reach to the fisheye. Well, that's not really particularly true, because the Tower Raid missions are accessible to you as soon as you finish the prologue and have access to the bazaar. Baka is officially back with some returning rewards from previous Halloween events and as well as some new rewards that are genuinely really good, and I actually mean it this time. So, one of the things that you will notice when you arrive in the fisheye is no, fisheye, am I an idiot? Anyway, whenever you first arrive at the bazaar or even into like bigger locations, like I said on the fisheye, the Missy big ship and so on, you will begin to notice that there's a lot of decorations, and you might think, well, that's cool, then that means some of the enemies must be decorated as well. No, the enemies are not decorated whatsoever. You don't see pumpkin tiles roaming around. You don't see zombies wearing witch hats or some shit. No, it's just the decorations for certain bases that are like located throughout Villador, and that's pretty much it. Whenever you arrive to Baka, you first have to select your missions. Well, these are not really missions, but they're more like side objectives or bounties that you will have, like do this on levels and whatnot. But anyway, how does the tower raid exactly work? Is it the same way as in the beta? Yes, but there are some slight adjustments here and there. For one, you can kiss your ass goodbye and say fuck off to every single loadout that you have in your arsenal. What do I mean by this is that instead of starting Tower Raid with your loadout, with your armor, weapon, accessories, and medicine, and so on, the game actually gives you a pre-built loadout with 4 different classes. The only thing that you get to keep in this Tower Raid is your skills, your base skills, meaning your parkour skills and as well as your combat skills, and that's pretty much it. Any legend skills or anything else beyond that, you will not get to keep it. Or like be able to transfer it to the Tower Raid, because what the game has instead is built-in classes. And the classes are interesting to say at least, so without wasting any more time, let's get into it and what each class essentially does. The Scarecrow is pretty much the tank of the class, wielding a scythe that does a solid amount of damage and as well as having a trait that provides a 45% damage reduction against pretty much every source. Whether that be physical, whether that be toxin effects, and so on. It also has firecrackers, molotovs, and as well as the Carnage Medica. It also has a military medkit, medicine, lockpicks, and as well as health regeneration that you can also craft. Excuse me. It also has the highest amount of health compared to the other classes, but the problem is it has the third lowest stamina than the rest. The Plague is pretty much the damage dealer of the class, having a special trait where it deals 25% bonus damage with one-handed weapons. It has a Plague Cane, which does a solid amount of damage, but also has a special ability of shooting out Toxin 3 times. And the way it's built, it's either by killing enemies or it passively recharges. It has both medicine and as well as military medkits and lockpicks, but it also has the ability to craft rage boosters, or actually starts with them. The Van Aiden is pretty much the sniper or the marksman of the group, being able to dish out huge amounts of damage to bigger enemies and as well as to those who are smaller in sizes. The only problem with the Van Aiden is the fact that it has the least amount of health, being 300, I think, going from memory, and as well as only wielding a tiny knife that barely does much damage. But the good thing about it is you're able to craft bolts and as well as an exploding bolt, which is a very new feature that I don't think I've seen in Dying Light history. And you also has a special trait of dealing 30% ranged damage bonus. So pretty much guns and as well as crossbows is pretty much your best friend. Van Aiden is just pretty much the damage dealer, but in distances, pretty much. When it comes to the Cursed Pirate, it's basically the jack of all trades type of situation because it has an exploding knife, dynamite, a shock mine, and as well as a boomstick. It has lockpicks, medicine, and as well as a couple of military medkits. But the good thing about him is the fact that he does parkour damage. But he's not really that particularly great whatsoever because he's more of a crowd control type of character because he's not really like Van Aiden and as well as the Plague Doctor where their main focus is dealing damage to bigger enemies or on groups. Meanwhile, the Scarecrow is just a better alternative to the Cursed Pirate because like why use that when, I don't fucking know, just go with the Scarecrow that has a two-handed weapon for fuck's sakes. Like why? It's like the Cursed Pirate can be good, but it's not really one of those classes where it's important. When it comes to solo gameplay, the one that you want to be focusing on a lot is the Plague Doctor, or just calling him Plague, whatever. The Plague is the only one you should really be focusing if you're planning on playing solo, but when it comes to friends, I don't know, just pick something. I don't play with friends because I'm a lonely bastard, so don't expect me to be very philosophical about, like, co-op classes, so yeah. Another thing that you will also notice is that you also have raid perks, but there's also something called seasonal perks, which I will get into in a little bit. But what is exactly raid perks? Raid perks are pretty much skills, but for the classes only. And there are three types of them. There's one that focuses on health and as well as having more resistance. There's one that also prioritizes on melee and as well as dealing out damage to bigger enemies and as well as providing some bit of lifesteal like execution and as well as decapitation and as well as providing stamina reduction on attacks and so on. There's also the one that focuses on ranged attacks and as well as providing more loot whenever you're looking around, which I will get into in a little bit. So, what is exactly different? Well, the difference is that, unlike in the base game of the tower raid that we got on the beta version, you used to be able to look around and find some loot, whether that be leather or scrap metal and so on. The only loot that you will really be finding in this version of tower raid is honey and scrap metal, and that's pretty much it, and occasionally some accessories like molotovs, grenades, and so on, and as well as boosters, which I will get into in a bit. But the one that you want to be focusing a lot are scrap metal and as well as medicine because those are the only core ingredients that you need to craft, say like a rage booster or when you need to craft a molotov, explosives and so on, or even bolts and yada yada yada. You get the gist of it. And so each floor will always be different. Different as I mean that you're not always going to be getting the same floor. You're not always going to start on floor 1 or floor 4 and so on. It's always going to be randomized. And with each floor there's a chance that you will get a positive floor modification or a negative floor modification. And what they essentially do is that they either change your gameplay style entirely or they buff the enemies or you and so on. This can range from enemies being resistant to body hits or you being able to deal bonus damage if you're full health or if you're low health. Basically, there's a 50-50 for having a modification. And what about the seasonal perks that I have mentioned earlier? Well, they're pretty much more or less like a universal type of buff that happens to everyone, but only the host can pick these. These can range from giving you a number of lives, like giving you additional 1, 2, or 3 lives, because for each death you have, you will lose a life, and on the base game itself, you will have only 1 life. And trust me when I say this, and if you're playing this on Nightmare difficulty, you will die a lot, because the characters are very fragile, except for the Scarecrow, but your weapons deal shit damage that you're more or less going to die from the immunity bar itself than the actual enemies, because the boss fights is where the annoying part sort of comes in with Dying Light 2, or with Tower Raid, because both Scarecrow and as well as the Cursed Pirate don't really do much damage against the boss enemies, but I will get into that in a little bit. But I'm losing track of this, but let's get back to the seasonal perks. So, like I said, it can range from increasing the amount of lives you have, allowing you to die more often, but it can also increase the chance of a positive modifier coming in more often by 25%, and it also increases the amount of candies that you're able to get by 30%, which I will get into in a little bit. So, for each floor that you complete, or for each levels you complete, whatever you want to call it, and if you die, you will be able to gain some bit of XP and as well as some bit of candy. You can use those candies as a way to buy yourself some equipment or be able to buy some seasonal perks. Keep in mind, season perks are a permanent thing, so once you buy one, it will always stay with you until the end of the event. And the rewards I will talk into in a little bit, but for each time you level up Baka, you will receive one skill. And not every single skill will cost approximately one skill. Some will cost 2, some will cost 3, some will cost 6, and so on. And you can also upgrade them to give you like additional buffs, like take the Fortress one where it gives 10% damage reduction for 2 points, but if you give another additional 3, you will get 30% damage reduction, and so on. You get the gist of it. Basically, the more you level up Baka, the more you get perks or perk coins to be able to level up your character. You can only level up yourself up to a maximum of 25 times, so make use of it. You can't get every single perk that Baka has. I will say this, do not grab genetically gift under the survivor section, because if you're playing this on nightmare difficulty, and I did try this, you are not going to be able to regenerate up to 80% health. This only occurs if you're playing on hard difficulty or lower, because on nightmare difficulty, for some reason, Techline decided to literally just completely remove the passive healing you have when you're low on health, which is kind of weird, but I'm not going to say much. But either way. And whenever you complete the tower raid, what do you get exactly? Well, you get a weapon crate that will give you either a legendary or an artifact quality weapon, or even a nocturnal weapon, and as well as a high level accessory or even a consumable, whether that be a max level throwing knife, muscle booster, toughness booster, and so on. But you'll also get a material box. And you might roll your eyes at this and think, well, why do I need this? Trust me when I say this, the amount of materials that they hand out to you is absolutely crazy. Here's a quick demonstration. Now, let's get into the bosses. Well, they're not really bosses, you're just more or less fighting the bigger enemies. Demolishers have become a mummy, the goons become a scarecrow, and then the revenants became a Slenderman, I think? I don't know, they're a tall dude that wears a suit, and that's pretty much it. But how are the boss fights? Well, it's just normal, but the problem is that there is so much enemies in every single floor, and I mean this by literally. You will face off against hundreds and hundreds of virals running at you, to the point where it will become impossible to like push them away unless you're playing the Plague. Because there is, like, even if you progress the floor by like 1 or 5%, like even if you literally just take a few steps, you will have 20 if not 30 virals coming at you at high speeds at an instant, just like coming towards you and able to literally surround you, which can be annoying at times because you can't really speedrun this, because Dying Light 2 has this weird collision where you can't really like barge through the enemies, much like in the first game, and you're not really able to like jump over them or like even land on their heads, or because like in Dying Light 2 for some reason you literally just get stuck on their heads. And trust me when I say this, you will get stuck a lot. In the early game, you will die a lot, and it will frustrate you a lot. But once you start getting the skills and as well as the seasonal perks and so on, then the game will actually become a bit enjoyable, which is something I don't really like, because the weapons are very fragile, even with the Plague Doctor's Rage Booster and, you know, damage increase bullshit. It's like, even with that, you're not really going to be able to kill the bosses that quickly, because even on nightmare difficulty, the bosses take like maybe 5 to 10 minutes to kill them, which can be a bit annoying and dull at certain times. But again, that's only occurs when you're like on the early game. But once you get into the late game, that's where the opposite stuff will happen. And yeah, the final rooftop fight is not the same way as in the beta version where you're defending a crate from the enemies. Instead, you'll be fighting 2 revenants, and that's pretty much it. Once you defeated them, you will get 1,000 candies, which is kind of depressing, but once you actually start descending, or quote-unquote finishing the tower raid, you will get a shitload of rewards, and I mean a lot, which is very good. And that's pretty much it. But what about the rewards themselves? Are the rewards any good that Baka gives out to you? And yes, there are. They're very good. You can also buy like blueprints from previous events, like those Freddy Krueger looking ass claws. You can also buy that as a blueprint, which is very good. You can also buy the Venom Sting, which was like a one-handed knife that you could get from like previous events as a blueprint, and it also gives out a new outfit or armor pieces. And at first, it may not seem interesting at first, but there is a passive skill that only this outfit has. The Van Aiden outfit gear set has a special ability where it provides or refills your ammo in reserve for each time you're shooting, which is a very strange feature, but I'm not really going to say much, but, I'm not going to talk about it. But what about the new rewards that they come around the table? The Monster Stabber knife is a very good knife. It's pretty much just a one-handed knife, but what makes this exactly special is it's the only one-handed knife in the game that is actually able to be modified twice, both the tip and as well as the shaft. On the other knives, only the shaft, if I'm not mistaken, is the only part you're actually able to upgrade on the other knives. But this is not the same thing with the Monster Stabber, which is a very interesting feature. They also brought in a new charm, which is called the Purifier charm, which basically allows you to deal more additional damage to enemies the more you lose your health. But it does also have another passive stat where it gives out a damage increase depending on the enemy's maximum health, which is very good if you're fighting against like volatiles, goons, and demolishers, and so on. And so there's also the Monster Slayer, which is a long sword that has a passive ability that says like it makes the heads decapitate a lot more. But I don't really notice it that much, but then again, that could just be me being able to literally just one-shot like half of the enemies on Nightmare difficulty. Like endgame stuff bullshit. But one thing that is overpowered from Baka is the Shadow Executioner. That being the to level 25 crossbow that you can get. And this is one of by far the most overpowered crossbow, if not better than some of the guns in Dying Light 2. Because it has two special traits compared to the others. For one, it deals slightly more damage, and you might think, well, what's special about it? Well, it is able to carry 9 crossbow bolts in its magazine, for some apparent reason. Why does that work? I have no idea. But it also, it has an additional passive. It deals additional damage depending on the maximum enemy's health. So if you're fighting an enemy that has a huge amount of health, like a Demolisher, Goon, or Volatile, this thing will shred them to pieces, even on Nightmare difficulty. So it's pretty much safe to say that these rewards that Baka gives out to you is very good. There's also neat little outfits that you get, like the Van Aiden outfit, which is pretty cool. Can't really say much. It's pretty much just a vampire hunter outfit, which is cool. You also get this cool Phantom of Death paraglider, which is kind of nice, but I'm not gonna say much. There's also small little meme-worthy accessories that you can buy, like a pumpkin nade that like explodes on impact, and as well as you're also able to buy like the chocolate from last year, and there's also this year's like trick or treat chocolate, which has like additional buffs. Some increase your damage, some increase your FOV, but it can also mess you over, like making your screen go upside down and so on. There's also the jump start, the energy bar, which gives you a double jump, which is pretty cool. Well, it's not really mind-blowing, but it's nice to have it if you're planning on running around a lot. But there's also the infected plastic exterminator, which is a weird weapon because it says point at an infected's head and watch the magic happen. The only thing I remember seeing while using this is it only one-shots virals and biters. I tried to use this on goons, demolishers, and as well as on the volatiles. It didn't really happen. Unless my aim is complete garbage, then, I'm not going to say much. Like, it's one of those weapons where it's only a one-time use, which is okay. And there's also a secret Easter egg. For each floor that you go to, you will notice that there is a Dying Light the Beast card. With these cards, you can actually sort of collect them, up to 12 of them. You're only, like, visiting, like, 8 floors, so you have to sort of, like, look around a lot. But the only way you can really find them easily is just simply look through floors and use your Survivor Sense. The easy way to find them, even on Nightmare difficulty, is that the game will show a magnifying glass, or, like, an investigation thing, and that's where you know you have found the Beast card. You will need upwards to 12 of them in order to be able to unlock the secret room. And once you're in the secret room, you will go into this little room up here, climb up, and then swipe the key cards 12 times for some reason. You'll go inside, push away the body, and then grab the Dying Light the Beast shirt, which looks really cool. The stats are dog shit, but it does give out a good armor, gear armor for some reason. But like visually, if you want to use this for the sake of like armor transmog, then go for it. But you know, it's just a niche little Easter egg for the sake of Dying Like the Beast. And that's pretty much it. What are my complaints? There is not a lot of parkour, which is like parkour is just pretty much sitting in the back room. During tower raid, you will get stuck a lot. Like, trust me when I say this, you will get stuck a lot, and you will get overwhelmed a lot. You will die a lot, and you'll more or less going to die from the immunity infection than actual enemies, because on the early game you do so little damage that you're gonna run out of immunity and die from that, and so on. It's like early game, it's torture. Like, it's just seriously torture. Like, it's so damn bad. But once you start getting the skills that you need and actually start to do damage, then that's where the fun part really comes in. There's only like one class that you really need to focus on throughout the entirety of Tower 80 if you're planning on playing the solo nightmare, and that's the Plague. Scarecrow is fine, but the others are completely useless because they're fragile and don't do much damage, and so on. And maybe with friends this can be fun, but you know, do not play this with randoms. For God's sakes, do not play this with randoms. Based on what I've seen on comments, it's just like people don't really want to play this with randoms because some people say that it's depressing, some people say it's fun, and that's pretty much it. It's like, Tower Raid is fun, but there's really not much to do after you complete it, which is still my complaint. And there's also barely any parkour, like, focused floors. There are some new floors that, like, make you do some bit of parkour, but that's it. Like, parkour literally just takes a backseat, and consider the fact that there's a lot of confined space and a lot of claustrophobic areas, and if you try to, like, speedrun this, good luck. Like, literally, just good luck. Like, you can't do shit, because you will get cock-blocked a lot. Like, there's literally no point of even trying, so, yeah. I hope I explained this Tower Raid event well. If I had to give it an overall rating on how this event is it's a 7 out of 10. It's fun, it's engaging, and it offers really good rewards, and the rewards themselves, even with if you have everything, is good. Like, everything about it is good, but there's a lot of problems to it. Like I said, you get blocked a lot, you will die a lot, you will spend like 10 minutes hitting the same boss over and over and over and over, and you will get staggered a lot and so on. But once you're able to get through that and you're able to deal with that, you're looking at an event that is actually pretty solid. But it's not really that mind-blowing. It's cool. Although I'm a little bit depressed, or I'm a little bit sad, the fact that there's really not much like base game like changes, like the volatiles wearing pumpkins or whatnot, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I hope I explained this in detail, and if I didn't, well, that's your problem or my problem. I don't know. I don't really care, but hey. Goodbye. I'll drink myself to death. So goodbye. I'm kind of bored at the moment, so I'm gonna jump off the roof. Goodbye. Have a good day. Treat each other with respect. Take care of each other. Do not be rude to one another. And goodbye. Now get out of my house.